again. Good morning, everybody. Day 6 for the Louis Vuitton Cup Finals. It's all tied up 4-4, as you all will know. We are live from Studio B here at the Beach Street Yacht Club in San Francisco, where it's a few seconds, actually, after 5 a.m. in the morning. We've got Zoomers on today. Captain Jack is joining us. John Schaefer in Annapolis. And Ed Worley down in SoCal, and Graham Sweeney is up in Scotland. Christopher Gillingham dressed to the nines again today, looking like $1 million. We're going to have John Emmett with us in due course. He's at the chiropractor getting his back adjusted before he goes off to, where's he going? Villamora, I think, to do some racing. We have Patrice Gallo-Rockland, Jody Shields, he's awake in north of Sydney at shortly after 10 p.m. his time. Mark Holland, our strategist, is on as well. Richard Lawton, Rick Bannerow, Alistair Murray, Mr. President of Australian Sailing. Jeffrey Talbot, nice to have you on, Jeffrey. Peter Worcester in Rhode Island. Roger Lockhart. Theo Smith, I think we mentioned. Rhode Island Rover is Graham Sweeney's Union Jack. Graham, is your Union Jack upright? Let's see it. Let's see it. You got to say something to bring we got the, you got to say something, Graham. There you go. You have to give us some instruction on how to put the Union Jack up. We did it properly at Stag Cruise. We had Dr. Andrew McIrvin on over the weekend at Stag Cruise. Let's carry on here because we've got work to do. We are all tied up at 4-4, first to 7. Quick note on the schedules upcoming. We're doing this watch party today, already the 2nd of October. We'll do one tomorrow unless it's a reserve day. Tomorrow is scheduled to be a reserve day. Whether Ian Murray or not runs racing, I don't know. We shall see. In the meantime, looks like Friday will be a race day unless somebody wraps it up. If one of these teams wins 2 today and if tomorrow's a race day, and somebody wins 1 tomorrow, that same team wins 1, it'll be over at 7. First to win 7, or 7 points, technically. And then probably do our regular show Friday afternoon. Julia, who's I think is upstairs. I don't see her on the Zoom yet, in addition to our other Zoomers. And as I mentioned, John Emmett will be joining us in due course to help us with play-by-play. In the meantime, let's go to our principal Zoomer, not principal maybe, but our initial Zoomer, Graham Sweeney, to give us what his thoughts are on today. Graham, who's going to win?
Well, yeah, you do this to me all the time. I'm going to say what I've been saying all the way along. I'm going to say the Brits are going to win. They're going to win 2 games and take it home. I mean, that's pretty much it. I'd like to say other things, but I feel like my gums are just flapping. So, no, I'm just going to say Brits are bringing it home.
Okay, let's go to Captain Jack because he's got some insider scoop and information. By the way, I think we were right yesterday on everything we said. First of all, that actually Jimmy Spithill was holding on, trying to force Ineos to keep racing rather than calling in his support team, his support boats after they broke down, in the hopes that the Brits would break down or at least have to keep racing and not be able to tune up for the next race. That I think we were right. And the other thing, when the Brits got that stupid boundary penalty at the start in the pre-start of the second race, and they went carrying on, and it looked like they were going to tack after the Italians had jibed away. It looked like they were going to tack and try to come in high and fast and maybe bear away and get a hook, but on the Italians. But then just before they tacked, they had a bit of a wobble over there by the boundary, and then they kept going for another couple boat lengths to restabilize. And that's, as it turns out in post-race interviews, that's what they said happened. They had a boundary penalty, which was, not quite race over. But let's go to Captain Jack, John Schaefer, in his yacht in Annapolis, or near Annapolis. Good morning to you, where it's 8:04, Jack?
Good morning, everybody. It's good to see everyone again. Just have a couple of thoughts I wanted to share with you. I think that wobble that you saw yesterday at the start by the UK, I'm pretty sure that the decision was, instead of splashing down, take the penalty. That way you don't have to come back on foils. And so that's pretty much that was. But one of the things I was pondering last night is the different. I mean, looking at the speeds, they're almost identical. I think you can see a little more acceleration coming out of the Italian boat. But when you compare the differences, I mean, just visually, you can actually see that the UK boat is definitely much bigger. I think that in the decision-making process for Italy, they decided to go with a lighter boat, which talks about how much they can accelerate, which means they had to make a choice based on maybe going a little more fragile for speed and hoping things don't break all the time, or building a sturdy boat that's going to go the entire length of the difference. And so this, as always, turns into a race of attrition. And so I think what's going on here is the breaks that you're seeing with Italy is their decision-making and going with a lighter boat and having the stresses go, gambling on, I hope it doesn't break, as opposed to the decision-making with the UK was, this is going to be a race of attrition. Let's build a strong boat and get to the end.
Okay, Captain Jack, thank you for that analysis. Let's quick go to Christopher Gillingham as we've got a race teeing up here in Barcelona. We've got some Sail GP news too. Christopher Gillingham, did you see that news?
I did, yeah. So Giles Scott going to Canada.
Well, yeah, Canada confirmed they've got a new sponsor owner, and then Giles Scott leaving Team GBR and going to Canada. What do you think of that?
Canada.
3 minutes to start. Quick.
It's sad to see one of our guys go, but he is a gun for hire. So, fair game to the guy. He's got to go where the money is and got to go where he thinks it's right. So
Indeed. Well, nice to see you on again, Ed Worley. Quick thought from you. We got 3 minutes to the start. The race is live, and then we got our play-by-play commentator here, John Emmett.
I think it's going to be close, but they're going to have wave issues to deal with today.
Apparently a little more easterly breeze, as you can see on the course diagram, and apparently a little more seaway. Let's go to our play-by-play man, who's been having his back fixed or his neck fixed. I'm not sure which. John Emmett, you got to us in time.
Hey, Tom, only just, neck, shoulders, hips, elbow.
I thought you were a young man. I didn't realize you were so bloody old.
No, I'm in bits, but it's almost time for the Italians to enter. I do have to say, I did suspect Dylan was going to be driving the Sail GP. If you go back, I think I did put that in one of the live shows. But for me, I've done a lot of thought about this, and I think it doesn't pay in terms of risk reward to be too aggressive. I think we've got less than 2 minutes to go to the start, and I think the tactic that works well is just to concentrate on time and distance, have a good start, and then pounce on the rival boat when they make a mistake, because I think the risk reward from being too aggressive, you're not match racing an Ilka, you're not match racing a Finn, you're not even match racing a keel boat. So the way they respond, I think it's quite high risk reward. So the start, like any start, is time on distance, having that gap to leeward, and probably most importantly, hitting at full speed.
Do you like being at the pin end, as Gordon Smith calls it? Gordon's got a family thing. He's not going to join us today. You like the pin end or the committee boat end, as we used to say?
I mean, I've literally just walked through the door. I'm worried I don't think I put my mirrors in on my car, so hopefully nobody's going to take them off. So I haven't had a chance to look. But I think speed on distance is the most important thing, because you should come in over speed if you have the space, sort of reaching speed and then go up. But it looks like we have a bit of a match race coming on here, and I think the reliability is in the favour of the Brits. I'm just waiting to see an overhead shot.
There it is.
So it looks like the Italians are really close to those diamonds being intersected.
Well, it looks like the Brits were trying to get a hook, John.
Well, at the moment, they're both early, so this is in the favour of the Brits. If they can really close it down, they've probably got enough time to put in attack, or if they go pin end, be at full speed. So we've got a split tat start. We've seen that quite a lot, and it's a case of the meters. So at the moment, I think if this was on board the boat, all your focus would just be going as fast as you can, and the crucial cross will be coming up in about 90 seconds. And I imagine both boats are going to go more or less boundary to boundary. So that's Ineos tacking. It's hard to tell. I don't think that was a fantastic tack. They actually went back
let's
to the
listen.
overhead shot.
That's what they said from on the water. It looks like the starboard tack Italians were the right of way. Where's the green circle? We've lost from the TV the green and the red circles showing right of way and give way.
Yeah, I do think that Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli has been more slick with their maneuvers. But then I guess it's taking a small chance that when things don't work, they're in a bit of bother. So I imagine this is going to be a duck looking at the meterage, and it's much too close for Italy to do anything. So they're in a different phase now, and it's anyone's match. What I'm going to be looking for here is how good Ineos's next tack is. I mean, that's going to be absolutely key, because that meterage is absolutely nothing. In terms of race strategy, I probably prefer the positioning where the Brits are. But I'd love to see, they're showing us a replay of the cross. I'd love to see a replay of the tack, because it looks like there was some on the water contact. And yeah, you want to be flying all the time. So this is the crucial tack. That looks a lot better to me. That looked a lot better to me. The meters at the moment means it's a very marginal cross, but it does at the moment look like it's going to be a cross. So I don't think we're going to see any attempts of a slam dunk. So I did feel that on average, the Italians had a very slight advantage upwind, and I did feel the Brits had a very slight advantage downwind, but there's so many variables, it's really hard to check that. And it feels like GBR is now coming back a little bit, and sail selection will have been absolutely key today. I said I've only just sat down. So at the moment, I think Italy is going to have to duck. I mean, we haven't even seen the clocking, the bear away to make it hard for someone to duck. At the moment, it's boundary to boundary racing, and a little skid maybe for the Italians there.
Are the jib sizes, John, are the jib sizes different? The Italians have a smaller jib than the Brits?
I mean, I must admit, I'm spectacularly unprepared for this, and I haven't looked. I'd be much more interested if they did that at the start of the show, and they did the lineup. These are the people on the boat. This is the equipment they've used. But when we come to the next phase, it's still looking like the port tack boat won't be able to cross. So again, this tack is crucial, and that looked a very nice tack from the Italians. But
yeah, as Mark Atchison said, at least, John, we've had a lead change. And now we'll see if we have another lead change, very definitely at the last cross. And now the Italians on starboard, but GBR, John, GBR looks like they're going to cross ahead coming into the gate.
Yeah, and GBR are on ley line.
It's a smaller jib on the Italian boat.
Absolutely, Tom. Very. It looks like a size smaller.
So it's almost a simultaneous bear eye, but I'd say advantage to the Brits. And the Italians really didn't have much choice but to go there, because when you're so close behind, you're in maximum wind wash.
Well, we call that a simultaneous pass through the gate. They said a 2-second delta, but they're showing already. Well, GBR is leading. I think GBR had the lead going through the gate, according to the stats.
I think GBR.
John, let me finish, please, because otherwise we have audio problems. I think they had a 2-second delta at the gate, right?
Yeah, I think Italy's going into the job now. I do think GBR had a very slight advantage, and I do think they've got a very slight advantage downwind. So this could extend to 100 meters.
Graham Sweeney thinks Britannia has been quicker with a larger jib in the past.
I would say they look good. I think when the teams are trying to put together a package, what you're trying to do is get something with a larger crossover as possible to make that decision making easier. But I think the Brits probably have the better package at the moment. And that's often why you see one team make a small alteration between races, and that small alteration is enough. But 80 meters downwind is absolutely nothing. That's like going Olympic classes racing and having somebody one bow length behind, I guess, when you think about the relative speeds. So as you're looking down the course, looking upwind, that top right is normally the better approach where GBR is. So they can do the short starboard tack and then the long port tack up the next leg, leg 3. So the faster the boats, the more you have to think ahead.
Yeah, John, we're not in a southerly today. I believe it's an easterly. So the right side of the upwind right may not have that hook, may not have the same favored, the little bit of a hook that it had in the past.
I'm looking purely at what they're showing us on screen in terms of the pressure on the race course, which is obviously their model. But at the moment, a 200-meter lead. You see where that GBR is in the pressure now. That 200-meter lead. I mean, that's significant, and it looks like left-hand gate for GBR. They will miss that light patch in the bottom left-hand corner. So I think there's a lot to be said for tack minimization. So the faster your boat, the more this is on your mind. And, when you're doing tornadoes or NACRA 17s or whatever, you're thinking 2 tacks ahead all the time. So, I mean, Italy are right in the game. It's gone up to 12 seconds. So that's a good improvement from GBR, but they do have the split. So nobody's safe. For me, barring, I was going to say illness or injury, but 300 meters upwind is when you start to relax a little bit.
Okay, Krasimir says GBR needs a perfect CT rounding on leeward now. Yes, and they got it. And Mark Atchison confirming we're up to 12-second delta. The Brits looking good. What do you think, Christopher Gillingham? You're cheering for the Brits. We got all a bunch of Brits on here except for Ed Worley. And, we got today Captain Jack Schaefer is with us. Christopher, you must be feeling a little more relaxed.
I am. I may not have Graham's cushion, but I still have my my cravat or my neck guard, GBR.
Nice.
That's a magic trick. Do that again, you can disappear.
Go GBR.
Graham Sweeney, you're happy with what you see?
Yeah, Tom, can you hear them nails going in that coffin we were talking about?
Yeah, right. Well, I was texting with Graham overnight as to who was going to win. I thought the Italians would come out and win 2 in a row today. I thought it was going to be lighter, but clearly it is not lighter. As you can plainly see, Ed Worley, a bit of bump and an easterly here. You've been up all night studying all of this. What do you think?
I think GBR is doing a great job. They can just cover and stay ahead and stay in phase with the wind. I think they're going to pull this race out.
Captain Jack?
So I think it's great.
Thank you, Ed. Sorry. Captain Jack?
I'm looking to see right now if the chop is more heavy on one tack or the other. It looks like when they're on the port tack, the chop seems to be a little heavier. And I think that would have some sort of effect. I can't tell for sure right now, but my first observations looks like that chop might actually play.
Okay, well, let's go back to our superb play-by-play man. It's closing up a bit, John.
Yeah, so I was just waiting for that overhead shot to come in. But I think it's really hard, even if a team has a small advantage, to say, today is a British day or Italian day. It's all about the start still. And there's a lot of pressure on getting that start absolutely right. I mean, it's a concertina effect. It will go up and down and up and down. And according to what I'm looking at, it's now 150-meter lead for GBR. If they stretch that on the downwind leg, I think they're pretty safe. And, it's closing up, but as I say, I think it's not clear until we get to the top. What we do have is a split tack, and it's only when they come back together we'll see that true distance. But it hasn't gone down to that dangerous 40-meter mark at all.
John, is it, with all that, they just showed the wind wash on the screen. With all that wind wash coming off the lead boat, both upwind and down, is there any real chance, other than a major fustercluck on board, of, the boat handling mistake? Is there really any chance somebody can pass?
Well, I think that the Italians have done a really good race to keep it going, to split whenever they can, because that's how you get the leverage. But because of the boundaries, which are effectively very small, you are bouncing boundary to boundary, and that makes it very difficult. And that, like a lot of high-level racing, is exactly why the start is just so important. Now, it looks to me like Ineos is coming in and they're going to split the gate again, but I think the delta will have definitely gone up. So I'm feeling pretty happy for the Brits. But as I said, anything can happen. And these maneuvers are really important. And I do think LRPP has been very slightly slicker on average.
9 seconds, so it's down a bit from the 12.
My comparison would be to the previous upwind leg, and it is stretching. And I would say GBR is in the better position downwind at the moment for the pressure.
Jamie Hutchison is just joining us from Sicily. I got a text from him just before we went to air saying that he's on a cruise ship and we have saved his biscuits because without the stream, he said on the cruise ship they were trying to charge him $300 for a fast internet connection. He's got a slower internet connection that allows him to watch apparently us on either YouTube or Facebook. And that allowed him yesterday to watch it, and he's very appreciative. Jamie, nice to have you on. He's headed to Barcelona, in fact.
I guess he's watching us in 240p, though. I don't know what qualifies as a slow internet connection. But yeah, GBR is extending a little bit more here. And I think if it does close up, it is easy for the lead boat to throw that dirty air behind. But just all those folks who thought it was going to be all light air racing, when you turn up to a major competition, you need to be competitive across the entire wind range that you may race against. And 6.5 to 21.5, I mean, that's a pretty big wind range. So yeah, I think it's fantastic racing. And 150 meters sounds a lot. It's really not when you're doing over 40 knots. In fact, here downwind, they're going to be having to sail quite deep so they don't go over the 50 knots and risk having the foils losing grip. So for the Brits, the the squeaky bum time is definitely this leeward mark rounding to do a really good rounding and ideally wide entry so they can have that tight exit. It's whenever they've come into the mark hot and close to the mark, that's when they struggled. I can see Tom's pointing at the wattage. I'm sure four Fozy could get together and do that, couldn't we?
I was talking with Clark Chapin yesterday afternoon after the race. I said, Clark, is there not something better than wattage? Here's what's happening. I'm getting comments, questions all day, as many of you are. And people asking, well, what wattage are they generating electricity with their legs, not their arms, generating electricity with their arms, which is powering the batteries or charging the battery? No. The wattage is just a measurement of power, ergs per second, or whatever you wanted to do. Hang on, John.
Hi, Tom.
John.
We got quite a crucial moment of the race here now. So Ineos has actually jibed.
Hang on, John. I'll come back to you in a sec. We're watching it here. They've slowed down a bit. Your beloved GBR team's going to be okay. Just a sec. 7 second the delta. But long story short, people think that the cyclors are charging batteries. And I said to Clark, what if we use horsepower? There's a bit of a wobble from the Italians as well. What if we use horsepower? And it turns out it's about 1.3 horsepower is 1,000 watts. John.
So that was a really crucial jibe there from Ineos. They stuck it right on Prada, and that explains the difficulty they're in now. I say everybody has to think 2 steps ahead. So they jibed there. It meant Prada had nowhere to go other than round the other gate, and they've already stretched that lead to over 200 meters. That was a really difficult maneuver for Italy. And when it's this sort of wind range, any difficult maneuver, you're potentially going to lose because you can't do it as smooth. And I do wonder whether GBR is now going to stick a attack on them, because we've got over 200 meters and they can really close the race down. So I think that leeward mark rounding, that was probably a race defining moment in this race. Yeah.
Alistair Murray thinks the LRPP are having trouble handling the chop. Would you agree, John?
No, I think LRPP, when they've had time and space, have looked really slick. I think GBR forced the error by giving them a really hard maneuver to do. It's like being at a 470, getting to the windward mark, tacking, jibing, and hoisting all at the same time. You're never going to do that as well as just a bear away hoist. And yeah, the Brits forced that difficult rounding on the Italians. It's what I was talking about. If you ever come high into the mark on a high lane, it's incredibly hard to do a good rounding. So that was what we talked about pre-start, about sailing a clean race, but making it difficult for your opponent when you have the opportunity.
Yeah, Krasmir's agreeing with you 100%. And they've shortened the course a little bit. It's down to a 1.75 nautical miles. Not that it makes much different from the 1.8, but it does look like the Brits' comfortable lead now of 225 meters or so. Captain Jack, you were going to make an observation.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm seeing here is with a smaller jib, the Italians don't have the power for the waves. And I think it's a pretty good decision with Ineos to have a bigger jib to help them power through some of the chop and the waves.
John?
I mean, I think the difference with the jib size is much more relevant downwind. 300 meters. I think it's hard without seeing the windward gate, but I'd expect Ineos to go here and just close down the race with 1 lap to go. But without seeing the windward gate, it's pretty hard. But there's not a lot the Italians can do now. I say that was a race-winning maneuver by the Brits, forcing that leeward mark rounding. I think the Italians are perfectly competitive upwind, possibly. They actually, if you look, have a wider range of good VMG, but we're going to see Brits one more tack and in, and I think they're going to be able to sail away from here.
Graham Sweeney, you think that this jib size has made quite a difference. I see your comments.
Yeah, definitely. It's given them more power to get through this horrible slot that we see here. And I think every time I've seen them put the larger jib on, it's done the business for them. So yeah, definitely a larger jib.
I see Bobby Steele in the comments saying the same thing. Hi, Bob. Nice to see you on. A lot of new names in here today. And John, I think your comment, squeaky bum, is the new, those of you who follow us on our regular shows, there's a drinking code word that the regulars, the Fozy, agree behind the scenes. And I think, John, you've got a new one for us, and it's squeaky bum.
It's a great boat name.
John Emmett, squeaky bum.
I mean, I'm pretty relaxed now. I mean, I missed that. I think it was just over 15-second delta. The boats have split, but Ineos is in good pressure, and I think they're far enough ahead that the job is done. I mean, you can see it. We're now, I don't know what feed you're looking at, but the Italians are not looking, the spectators are not looking overly excited. And as we look upwind, there is more pressure on that right-hand side. So I think it's never safe, but they closed the race down as well as they could. And I still think the start is just so important. And I think the Brits made the best of the start. And it's marginal gains, but a good start. is something they can take confidence in for the next race.
We just had an announcement from the race committee. Did anybody get that? 15 seconds was the delta at the last gate. I just want to say hi to Sean Hogan, who's in Melbourne, where it's, what time is it there? It's 22:30 tonight, your time, and Sean's been in hospital fairly under the weather. Hope you've come good, Sean. Are you still in hospital? Let us know in the comments. Ed Worley, any observations from SoCal this morning?
I think John's right. I think Ineos blocked LRPP out, and they had to tack on the line and run down the line, and Ineos did a great job in the start. And they've just been doing a nice conservative race and just keeping in phase with the wind and the pressure.
Yeah, Krasmir is the comment we've all talked about. We were talking about here on the Zoom just before we went live about how Giles Scott has transferred. Oops.
Moving the windward gate, shifting the course axis to 072.
072. So Giles Scott asked John Emmett what he thinks of that. Has been confirmed now as the new skipper of Sail GP's Canadian team. Canada back with a new sponsor, new owner. John Emmett?
Well, I think Dylan's going to be driving the Sail GP, but this is just coming up to the leeward mark rounding, and I think this is one of the last high-pressure manoeuvres. It's quite a difficult one for the Brits coming in tight there, but it looks like they did a good job, and I think they're flying with confidence. They're fairly low to the water, and you get that locking effect, and the delta, if anything, has increased. But again, they have split, so it's not, that there is some leverage for Prada, but just keeping everything as simple as possible. Again, I do like this stuff they show with the wind graphics. I don't know how easy it is to see on the water, but that right-hand side looking upwind does seem to have more pressure, and specifically where the Italians are looks pretty light. Of course, this distance is always going to close up when you're going from downwind to upwind, but 200 meters, that's pretty good. I think one of the things with a start, if you have slightly more power than your rival, you can do a higher lane. But if we look back to a long time ago, the Kiwis had a really, really good high mode that made them very, very dangerous. So yeah, Italians looking in a bit of a light spot here. And one of the things I would say, everybody's on a learning curve, but it's often the people who use their equipment the best, not the people who have the best equipment who win. And it just feels everybody's learning how to put their package together and how to make the most of it. I mean, if you just looked at it on appearances, I know a lot of people think the Silver Bullet is the most beautiful boat, but I come from Ilka's and the rig's usually fastest when it looks absolutely horrible.
Hey, Christopher Gillingham, you and I have been talking about whether this close racing is going to help one of these challengers be competitive, if not beat the Kiwis. What do you think?
I'd say that's still the case. They're going to be honing their skills. In the meantime, the Kiwis will still be doing what they're doing. They'll be out training and keeping a close weather eye on what's going on. But this is good. This is good teamwork. This is got to be good for whoever's going to come through this. And it's looking good for GBR at the moment. But it's all a positive. More time on the water. It's bums and boats. It's getting everyone on the water. So this is good news.
Well, Ted Ryman's just arrived home. He's saying, what a pleasant sight seeing GBR ahead. We got a lot of GBR supporters on here, John Emmett. A lot of them, including you.
I mean, yes, of course I want GBR to win, but I mean, my comments are more pragmatic than that. I think I want the person to win who sails the best. You certainly wouldn't want somebody to lose because of gear failure. The most important part of the race is the start, and that's why the practice boat on boat in anger is so important, because you're never going to have that sailing under pressure, jibing under pressure, tacking under pressure, crossing under pressure, other than in a real race. And that's why it's just so important that they have all that starting practice, because with two evenly matched teams, that's going to be one of the things that comes out. And going back to the laser days, I can honestly say Ben was a much better starter than Francesco. you can look at the results yourself. And much
John,
better
there's
than
a
being
question
hardcore.
here from the chat. Is Jonathan Frank, our 777 pilot in Super Fosi, is asking, is every time they cross behind, every time upwind they cross behind or even downwind, is the boat astern losing distance because of the dirty air?
Absolutely. That's why they're trying to go boundary to boundary to minimize it. And they're trying to have the split. But let's have a guess. This is going to be 18 seconds now. So it's really, and that's a nice rounding with Ineos on one foil rather than having to put two down. They probably just ticked over 50 knots.
13, so they closed up a
13
touch.
again. But again, I feel the Italians are probably now out of phase. The Brits doing the short tack and then the long tack. And as you say, every time they cross, there's that wing wash. It'd be nice to see a little bit of a overhead shot because, of course, the areas of pressure on the racecourse do change. I think if you look, that bottom right looking upwind is always a good place to come in from. And this is close racing. I think GBR has maintained or extended the lead. And I think Prada will probably just throw jibes in just to try anything, really. But the way I see it, GBR is just going to sail consistently, aim for the middle or the finish line, and start thinking about the opposite entry for the next race. I guess they win by over 300 meters.
Yeah, or at least that order of magnitude is Fritz Mueller checking in from Miami. Hello, Fritz. Nice to see you on. Just getting from Miami. And once again, Fritz and everyone else, the Brits are winning the first race of the day. This has happened consistently, except I guess the first day. Let's ask Mark Holland to confirm that, who won the very first day. But otherwise, these teams going into this race were tied 4-4. And each day the Brits win the first race, and then the Italians win the second. Any thoughts on why that is, John?
Whenever you look at data, if you have a really small sample, it becomes absolutely meaningless. I think if the Brits have another good start, they will win the next race. Simple as that. I wouldn't overthink it. It's almost going down the same route as well. I was wearing my lucky socks that day, and I won. You could probably argue the toss about whether there's some advantage with port over a starboard entry or vice versa, but I don't think it's that. I think the Brits had a better start and they sailed well. Teams are closely matched, and there's not the opportunity for the Italians to come back. And yeah.
John, but the Brits didn't have the better start.
They did.
No,
Absolutely
they did. The Brits or the Italians were leading, and the Brits passed them. And Bruce Nelson is saying the bigger jib seems faster. Will be interesting to see if Luna Rossa changes up. I mean, you think that the pin end was favored, but they had the split tack start. The Italians came over from the right, and they were leading halfway up the leg.
Let's agree to disagree. I would say the Brits definitely had the better start in terms of where they were positioned and what speed they were doing. The Italians had a very short port run to that right-hand side.
I have a theory.
Please, John.
I've been inside the UK's kit before, and they have an espresso machine. And I think Jimmy has Red Bull, and I think the espresso machine is working better.
Oh, come on, John. Let's be serious here. Come on, Captain Jack. Let's be serious here for a minute. I want to go around Christopher.
They're off ready to go every single race.
Yeah, come on. Let's be serious. Captain Christopher Gillingham, what are you thinking here after another British win?
Let's keep it going. I mean, we've done well. Let's bring it in for the second race. We've talked about all the positives, the starts, the downwind speed. It's a good positive. This is great news for us.
I'm sorry, John. I disagree with you. I think that split tack start was, and a lot of others in the comment agree, that the Italians they gained the right upwind right, and they led. There were arguably four. I don't think there were four lead changes, Mark Holland. I think there were just two in the crosses. And I think the Brits, John, I'll go back to you and you can defend your position, but I think the Brits are faster upwind.
Well,
and downwind, probably.
what you're forgetting, Tom, is that the first British tack was very poor, and in the absence of the poor tack, the British would have crossed. So,
I disagree. I think they may have crossed. We don't know, but regardless, the Brits have sailed a terrific race and have gone on to win the first race of the day yet again. I don't know how many more data samples you want, but there's something weird going on here. I don't know if it's the start entry or if it's the karma or if it's coincidence. But Andy Cox is saying it's all about the starts and keeping the boat steady and smooth. Ineos seems to handle this sea state well. Ed Worley, what do you think about the sea state? You've been talking about that since we were talking almost 2 hours ago now.
Yeah, I think the large jib is helping them power through the sea state, but I wonder when they change the cyclers now, if Ineos is changing to another group of cyclers, they're having trouble generating the hydraulic pressure they need in the second races. I don't know. I mean, it's. I think John's right. I think it's all about the starts, and I would like to see them sail out to the ley lines instead of bouncing the boundaries. So that's just me.
Okay, so Rain Man is agreeing with John. He thinks that because the Brits forced the Italians to tack before the start. Well, I'm not so. I think they did force them to tack, but I think that's what Jimmy wanted. I think he wanted the upwind right. We'll find out after. Let's see what Ben's got to say here.
To be honest, it's you're pretty fully focused either way. But yeah, it's a knife edge keeping these foiling boats. Yeah, they're delicately, finely tuned and cutting through the wave tops and not falling off the foils. So real challenge for all the teams.
Ben, how are you going to break this deadlock?
What did he?
Well, if we win the next race, it would help, wouldn't it? So yeah,
okay. Well, let's go to Graham Sweeney, our original, the OG Zoomer. Graham, you must be happy seeing your UK team win yet another race.
Yes, Tom, very much so. Point of note, though, I think the last few races, Britannia's been quite nervous about its manoeuvres with its rudder. I think they had the diver down looking at the rudder. They feel a little bit fragile on the turns. They've been taking it yesterday. They were taking it very easy round the turns. And I think that today they've decided that, let's not worry about these turns. Let's just get on with it. And I think that maybe that's the option for having the bigger jib, is that the bigger jib they thought might have been more problem on the turns. And so they've just gone for the bigger jib, which is what they would have done. And it's now working for them, which, as Ben says, it's on a knife edge. But I think the larger jib may be to do with the rudder.
Okay, Captain Jack, I think you just saw a jib. Hang on, Jack. Everybody, relax. I'll invite you into the show. Relax. Relax. And don't talk over me because we'll have an audio problem. And I'll try not to talk over you. Please, you have no idea how difficult it is to try to do this in Studio B, to balance you croutons on the Zoom and everybody in the chat, and to keep this thing flowing so that it's interesting for everybody, not just you expert yacht racers. Thank you very much. Captain Jack, I'm going to ask you now, they see the Italians just changing the jib. Over to you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think one of the things about that, and what I was alluding to earlier about the coffee, is that I think the Brits are better prepared for the first race. And I think the Italians are catching up, observing what the Brits have done. And so I think that's what you're seeing every time. And of course, you're seeing the jib change here because somebody somewhere made the wrong decision earlier today.
Okay, well, we see that jib change being taking place now. Christopher Gillingham, what do you think about the jib size? Do you agree with Ed Worley?
I agree very much with Ed and Captain Jack. It's the Italians are there. Both teams are very much there. And I think the bigger jib size for this race too will, again, make the race even closer and tighter. So good luck to both teams. But yeah, really good to see some good sailing.
Well, it is. It's fantastic, and it's exciting to watch this close racing. I think having John Emmett be doing our play-by-play has been a huge help, too. And I would just want to say to Mark Michelson, who's in the chat, Mark's had a bit of a health setback, but he seems to be coming good as well. He's been, I think he's still in hospital up in Idaho, but he's been our Sailing Illustrated wind guru, weather guru, along with Bobby Steele, who does it for us for GovCup, along with Lance Burke, who does it here in the Bay Area. And I appreciate all of you, including and especially our superb Zoomers. And let's go back to John Emmett and see what he thinks is going to happen in this next race.
I think there was 3 questions, so I'll try and catch up. As far as I'm aware, it's Hamish Wilcox who's making that big call in terms of what sails they use, and I think his track record just goes before him. In terms of data sets and Tom's question, I would want to see thousands of samples before I bet my house on anything. It's like when you roll out a vaccine, you don't test it 13 times, you test it thousands and thousands of times before it's fit to make a decision on that. So far too many variables for first race one way, first race another. So that's the fact for statistics. In terms of the next race, it will be very, very much on the start. And I wouldn't read too much into the jib change, because we don't know whether there's minor differences. We've got quite a lot of time with the sea state. And with the start, I think, again, Brits will probably take a little bit more courage, that they can push it a little bit more. Because anytime you get that close boat-to-boat contact, you're making it very, very difficult for your rival. And I think it's not only the start, that first tack is absolutely crucial. So if we can really focus in that's another key point in the race. I mean, maybe 1 minute before and 1 minute after.
Yeah, well, Alan Long, the Zoomers are superb. They're also croutons. They can be both, as can I. Jib change on LRPP, Trey Ritter is saying. Indeed, we want to welcome Julia to the show. She's upstairs in the Commodore's suite without video, but seeing her on is always a good sign that things are she's getting around upstairs in the Commodore suite here. I want to go back to the Sail GP announcement for a minute and see if any of the Zoomers have a thought on the fact that Canada is still in and back. In fact, a lot of people speculating that Canada would not be back. And also wondering if some of you are surprised by that and wondering who you think will be the team that without a boat. I think the Kiwis, some of you thought were going to go out because they didn't seem to have a sponsor. But that team is owned by some subgroup of the sailors, including especially their skipper and helm, so Pete Burling. So I wonder if the Australian team is at risk. What do you think, Graham Sweeney?
Sorry, Tom, I was texting there. I missed that. What was that?
Well, we're just talking about Sail GP and what's going to happen. Maybe Ed Worley's got a view. We were talking before we went live. Go ahead, Graham.
Sure. I think it was bound to happen. I think we don't know what's happened in the camp here, do we? I mean, he's taken a back seat as Giles, and it was right at the last minute. So, was there a loyalty? Was his loyalty brought into question? We don't know. But I think
you mean loyalty? The fact that Ben didn't keep him on the AC 75 as Giles Scott said, well, the hell with you, I'll go to Canada, and maybe they're going to put. I think let's go to John Emmett. I think he'd probably tell us that Dylan Fletcher's going to end up driving the British Sail GP team. John?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan is just a wizard at making foiling boats go fast. I mean, you only have to spend a little bit of time chatting to the guy in the change rooms to know how switched on he is. Giles,
the guy in the change rooms, is that like the locker room?
Yeah.
And we got another one. We got Squeaky Bum, and now we got the guy in the change rooms. That's a good one.
I mean, he just loves sailing. He comes from a dancing family. You can actually see it the way he moves across the boat. He's probably the smoothest walking across a boat of anyone I know. And when he was doing a 49er campaign, and let's not forget, he won gold. They'll come in, cup of coffee, piece of cake, and be straight back out on their foils. So Dylan is absolutely obvious to be driving the Sail GP, and I think probably said that a lot. But Giles and Bino are really good mates, and Giles has been doing the America's Cup for a long time, and it's just a case that, you know, he wants to be driving a boat, and Canada's the opportunity. In terms of the other teams, it's all about the money, and I would have no idea which teams have got the finances and which don't. I guess at the end of the day, if the teams don't have finances, the team that brings the fewest viewers is the one who's out, or maybe the team that performed the worst last season out of the remaining few.
Well, I guarantee you, John, it's the team that doesn't have a sponsor. It's the team that isn't contributing, hasn't bought the franchise from SailGP, and that's why we're wondering if Oz is at risk. Bruce Nelson is saying Hamish, he's agreeing with you, John. Hamish was excellent on pre-start sail calls during the 2007 match. They were all with Luna Rossa Prata Pirelli, right? Problem was the sailors often didn't follow his advice. Let's go to Captain Jack for his view on SailGP.
I think Oz is funded, and it's just a matter of time before you hear about it.
Really? Well, that would be good news. Rick Bannerow thinks the U.S. team needs to pick up Phil Robertson, who has been the driver for Canada, as most of you will know. He'd be additive in terms of gaining raw boat speed and some flat-out swashbuckling on the water. Well, you think that, Mike, speaking of swashbuckling, I don't know if that was a pun, Rick Bannerow, do you think that Mike Buckley and Taylor Canfield are going to step aside for another driver? What do you think, Captain Jack?
No way.
Yeah,
nope, I don't think those two are.
But that team's not done very well, that's for sure. Let's go to the American Zoomer on here, to Ed Worley.
That's right.
That's right. See what Ed Worley thinks about the future of this SailGP change up in Canada, and also how the U.S. team might get better this season.
Well, I don't know how the U.S. team's going to get better. I think they have some team dynamics problems inside the team. The thing that disappoints me is that when you have sailors who want to be rock stars and not team players and not build a team, then the team dynamics suffer. And the only way these boats can be sailed at such high performance, you have to have really great team dynamics. And when you have somebody who wants to be a superstar, that just doesn't mesh with it. So it's nice to see the Canadians come back. I'm just curious, how much does it cost for a franchise for SailGP nowadays?
Well, that's a very, very good question. Nobody's completely sure. There's speculation, but it's going to be.
Numbers.
Now, hang on, guys. I'll invite you in. I have a screen of you on here, and I'm sorry, but when you jump in, I get audio problems, and I don't want to cause confusion, and I got to flow. I'm already thinking 2 or 3 steps down the track here, and I want to go to Theo Smith's comment. Giles sailed in Canada as a youth and carries a Canadian passport, according to media reports. And yes, it's upwards now to $20, maybe more $1 million as a franchise ownership fee. Captain Jack, what do you think that fee is?
Russell Coutts was quoted as saying $36 million.
Do you believe everything Russell Coutts says?
That was a conversation he was having with one of the other athletes about getting their funding together.
Yeah, okay. Well, again, I've done some cup campaigns with Russell and known him a long time. I think you can probably get a franchise for less than that. Tom Pace, Commodore Tom Pace down in Pensacola. We've seen a significant delta every time the jibs are different across all the AC-75 so far. It goes against the instinct to make an aggressive choice to beat the other boat, but it's looking like it's better to match the sail selection and go to tactics and boat handling. Anyone want to bet with the same jib size, same jibs, this race will be a closer finish. And speaking of which, coming up on 6 a.m. here in San Francisco, coming up on 1500, 3 p.m. in Barcelona, we believe the next scheduled start time is 3:15. John Emmett, how easy, we see the Brits now have their jib down. Is there a little cat and mouse game going on here where you don't want to show the other team what jib you're going to put up?
Well, I think basically there's plenty of time until the next race. So the more time you give yourself to make a decision, the more likely you're going to make the correct one.
Indeed. Anybody else have a view on that? On the jib choice? Because I think, how about you, Graham Sweeney? What do you think about jib choice here?
I think they'll stay with what they've got. I think they've got some good data on what they've just raced, and I think that they know that they're forcing the Italians to do something different, which is always either going to give them an advantage or not. And
you think the Brits
that's the risk they take.
You think the Brits will stay with what they've got?
I believe they do, yeah.
And is the wind going out? Now we're saying 20 minutes.
Wind's going up.
That's about right. They're showing 20 minutes now as the time to start. In the past, in the 12-meter and the IACC days, the teams would send their chase boats over to have a look at the other team, and they'd see the jib bag up on the deck, and they'd have the code in big pencil stenciled on in great big white letters, or if it was a light colored, great big letters contrasting with the jib bag, but those codes were often not the codes of the jib that was in the bag, just to throw the other team off. Ed Worley, you remember that from your 12-meter days.
Oh, yeah. Lots of mind games going on with sail selection. And I'm curious if a larger jib helps him get the bow around faster for better tacking.
Yeah, Graham, Graham Sweeney, you're nodding your head. Yes, you like that?
Yeah, I think that's where the problem is, though, because they're nursing this rudder. If it's pushing the bow round, I think that's where they're worried about the cavitation, and that's why they've been going. The days before, they've been going for the smaller jib, which is maybe the wrong thing to have done.
Yeah, Bruce Nelson agreeing that it's a cat and mouse game, and they're both got the jibs on the deck. They've got plenty of time, as John Emmett just said. And we got a comment here now from Lori Fullerton. Hello, Lori. SailGP USA is rebuilding with a new team. Oh, a new team as of November 2024. I did an interview with Taylor Canfield in the September issue of Sailing Magazine, and their main financier is a tech developer from Uber who is a J70. Well, he sails J70s and others. I met him here at the Big Boat Series actually SailGP here in San Francisco. The team currently is all U.S. sailors. I think they acknowledge a learning curve and trained in Bermuda in August. I think they are sticking with the team and should be better next season. This is Lori Fullerton's comment. Not sure I see the rock star mentality, at least not from Taylor. Yes, I think that's a subtle comment vis-a-vis Mr. Buckley. Thank you, Lori Fullerton, for that. I want to go back to John Emmett because I think there's got to be some angst within the team, that is the Ineos team, with Giles now leaving to go to Canada. We all thought was going to be the B helm to Ben being the A helm, but John Emmett knows both of these guys very well, both Giles and Dylan Fletcher, and of course Ben Ainsley for that matter. What are your views of what's really going on inside of the team, John?
I'm sure it's all very professional. I mean, remember, there was a lot of people who wanted Giles to go to the 2012 Olympic Games, and he got on and he put the time in it, and he helped Ben, and then he went on to get several Olympic gold medals himself. I mean, I think basically, the fastest people earn their spot on the boat, and everybody understands that, and everyone puts in the time and gives 100%. And I'm sure Dylan's been getting the numbers. He's earned his time on the spot. Maybe he's got a little bit less match racing practice, but it's not the classic 12-meter match racing. It's half a click of boat speed makes a huge difference. So I wouldn't read too much into that. And for sure, everybody's focus is now on the AC. And Ben's obviously delegated quite a lot of the stuff that he would do in the past to other people. Really like what Freddie's been doing. And the Ineos, I think,
Freddie meaning Freddie Carr, who's here on this TV package they're doing right now. He is one of their cyclers, but he's been doing terrific media work, right?
Yeah, so for people who don't know Freddie, I'm going to struggle to think what he's called now. Freddie's real name is David Carr.
David, yeah.
And so his dad, Rod Carr, was the Olympic manager and the performance director, and actually eventually the chief de mission for the Olympic Games. Rod left a real legacy behind with British sailing, including the new structure and everything down in Hamble. And he was an incredible workhorse and set up that 20 years of British dominance at the Olympic Games. So, Freddie and Nat have been friends with Bino for years and years down Hayling Island. That's where I was at the weekend. And, I remember driving past Bart's house every time I come off the main road onto Hayling Island. It brings back a lot of memories. And I was there with Amanda Simpson, getting some pre-race advice Sunday morning. So it's a really tightly knit team. And I don't think I'm exaggerating. These guys have known each other for 20 years. So got 15 minutes to start time. And I think everybody will just be head down, do the best they can. And that includes Giles in the coach boat.
Yeah, it's now shortly after 3 in the afternoon, 1500. We're an hour into this watch party. Thanks for joining us here again, and thanks to our Zoomers who've joined from around the world. I want to say on this Sail GP thing, because we're getting a lot of comments about that, one of which is not about Sail GP, but I want to not lose Bruce Nelson, who, as you all know, is a famously good yacht designer and famously good sailor, living down in San Diego now for many, many years. And he and I sailed together on the Michigan sailing team back in the day, 50 years ago, bloody hell, when it was a good sailing team. And he's saying that the bigger jib is a lot faster downwind, and maybe that explains why the Brits have been faster downhill again today, as we saw. But back to Sail GP, I want to ask Captain Jack, because don't forget, the New York Yacht Club briefly had Mike Buckley and Taylor Canfield as their next team for this Cup. And then the Commodores changed, and there was some internal politics at New York that John Schaefer, about. And they ended up flicking that team in favor of going back to the Terry Hutchison regime. What's your view on all that as far as the American Sail GP team is concerned?
Well, they've consistently performed at the bottom of the pack. So they're consistent. So it's always good to have consistency, I think. And I think at the level we're sailing at, I don't believe there's a rock star mentality. They're all rock stars, and I see them working well together as a team. It's just the learning curves on these are just so much. They have the least time of anybody in these boats. So I think hopefully this year with the training package that they put in this last month.
You mean the American team has had the least time in the boat?
Yeah, Sail GP, correct.
Okay, another interesting comment here in the chat. And Sean Hogan, I see that you and Mr. President Alistair Murray are going to have lunch this week, so I'm glad to hope to see you're on the men. Likewise to Mark Michelson as well. John, I agree with John Emmett's comment here. Sadly, that there are no Asian boats in Sail GP. And, of course, he's married to a Chinese gold medalist, the famous Golden Lily Zhu. And, yeah, it is really, after having a Chinese team and a Japanese team, no Asian teams now. But let's get back to the America's Cup. Let's start to think about this next race, which is going to happen, we think, at 15 minutes after the hour. Who's your pick? Are we going to see, John, I'll come to you in a sec. Graham Sweeney, who's your pick for this next race? Are we going to see the Italians come through in the second race? Okay, I know John's going to get upset at me about this not being a big enough sample. But Graham Sweeney, we have seen the Italians win the second race of the day over and over again here. Will that come through again today?
Well, we have been the alarm clock for the Italians for quite a long while, haven't we?
You think they're just waking up at 3 in the afternoon?
Yeah. I think they've got to get the squeaky bum feeling before they go for it.
So you think their bum's not squeaky enough, and that's why they're not doing well. There was the assertion that Captain Jack was making a joke about their Red Bull versus coffee, and they need to use espresso. Maybe they need to have a cuppa. Maybe they need
barking collars,
a cup of tea, like the Brits are doing at 3 o'clock.
Tom, I think you fit them with some barking collars and shout at them. They might work better in the first race.
Ed Worley, who's going to win the next race and why?
It's so close between the two boats. I think it's just whoever makes the fewest mistakes. My gut's telling me the GBR is going to win. Ineos is going to win. That's what my gut's telling me.
Today, Ted Ryman says GBR will, in fact, win the second race. And I agree with Pete Carrizo. A crucial race for the Italians. If the Brits win this one and go up 6-4, they'll be on match point. I think tomorrow's a reserve day, so I think no racing tomorrow, Thursday, but I believe there's racing then Friday. And Jamie Hutchison is saying that squeaky bum is now the new drinking code word, Guinness time. John Emmett, you've created a new drinking code word here for us.
Well, when I assume it's me. When I was at uni, we just used to say drink. We kept it very simple, and you just weren't allowed to point at people. You had to use an elbow, no pointing. Otherwise, you were the one which drank. But I really want to go back very, very quickly to the Sail GP because it reminds me of the ridiculous movie Armageddon. So in Armageddon, they got a group of oil drilling specialists and trained them to be astronauts rather than getting astronauts and training them to drill. Which is just the most ridiculous thing ever. So what you need to do for Sail GP is get good foiling sailors and teach them to match race, not the other way around. I don't know why people, you just look at the results at the Moth Worlds, take in a little bit of wiggle room for the equipment, and then you go and pick Dylan Fletcher to make your boat go fast.
Yeah, totally.
In terms
100%.
of the next race, I don't think it's necessarily a good choice with the jib if it means they end up trading upwind speed for downwind speed, because I've already stated, I think in just about anything, upwind speed is more valuable than the downwind speed. And we don't know what the wind trend is. I mean, obviously the Brits were keeping their cards close to their chest, but you know, if the wind's trended up a little bit or down a bit, as I say, don't want to sound like a broken record, it will be all about the start.
Okay, well, what do you think, Graham Sweeney? Is it all about the start?
It is all about the start, but I'd like to remind John that we've just had the E Games with the sailing done virtually, and they put one of the winners in a boat. I think it was yesterday, and he did rather well. So maybe we're looking at a transition where people who can press buttons faster are replacing people who can sail fast.
John?
I mean, back in the day, it was an excuse. But Ben Ainsley used to play a lot of video games to try and level that up. And it was interesting. There was a comment by Hattie Rogers in terms of work in the simulator. She said she found it quite a big jump because a lot of them weren't video gamers. And she's probably the reserve helm or reserve trimmer this week for the 40s. But yeah, I mean, it's a very similar skill set. And I think fast reactions, I would imagine somebody that's good at flying an aeroplane, as in RAF type, is also very good at flying a boat and vice versa. In fact, my crew, a little plug out to, I won't give her full name, Nikki, but my crew for team racing went on to be the first ever female squadron leader for the RAF. And she was pretty good at roll tacking.
Well, we've got 7 minutes now here to the start, so it looks like we're on schedule for a 15 minutes after the hour, 3:15 in Barcelona start. That we shouldn't miss the fact that the women now are practicing. They've had some practice racing. The U.S. didn't do so well today, and it looks like the Australians, our Fozy is. Olivia Price is coming good, we hope, in the women's event. We'll be following that, but Captain Jack's got a thought.
Yeah, following on, I think John Emmett did a thing about visualization, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and I really appreciated that. But if you're an F1, if you're in NASCAR, even the military, everybody is using visualization and their training when it comes to their e-gaming at the same time. So that their simulation and visualization are really hand in hand. And I think you're seeing the top athletes in the world are doing that.
Well, I think that's an excellent point as well. I love the Zoomers. They are superb. They're croutons as well at times, but they are superb, all of you. Thank you again to all of you who've come on by Zoom and all of you in the chat. We've now got the Italian, John. You see that from Pete Cariso. Squeaky bum in Italian. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. A lot of people cheering for the Italians now because there's the flag. Both flags, in fact. A lot of people hoping to keep this series going. But again, if the Brits win this one, as we're teeing this race up for 5 minutes from now, if the Brits win this one, they go to match point. Let's go around, John. Who's your prediction, John Emmett? Who's going to win this one?
I mean, it's always got the caveat on the start, but I would favour the Brits, and I'm absolutely gutted I'm going to be flying on Friday at 1 o'clock. So I hope the BA Wi-Fi is on form.
Captain Jack?
Well, I'm going to go with consistency. Italy. They've always won the second race.
Graham Sweeney?
Yeah, we're going to put the nails in the coffin now. This is it.
Starting, you think the fat lady, if the Brits are going to win this one, which means they'll be on match point?
She's warming up.
She's warming up. Denise Peterson's in the chat. Hello, Denise, the mother of the famously good match racer Jeffrey. Another guy who's been in hospital, a young Jeffrey Peterson, hurt his shin in a collegiate race, 420 centerboard case, and then got an infection. Unable to come here to San Francisco this weekend for the U.S. National Match Race Championship, otherwise known as the Prince of Wales Bowl. Mark Holland, our statistician, saying out of 10 races to date, LR won 4, and their average delta was 20.75 seconds. Tom Pace thinks LRPP takes this one. And let's see finally what Ed Worley thinks.
I'm hoping that Ineos is going to win. I'd really like to see Great Britain back in the America's Cup racing it, and it would be even better, I think, if Great Britain won the Cup and took it back.
Okay, John
so
Bosley.
I think it's going to be very close.
Sorry, didn't mean to step on you. You think it's going to be close? I think we all think it's going to be close unless there's a bloody breakdown. John Bosley agrees, let's go British, let's go British. And Graham Sweeney is speaking, he's got Italian as well. Jonathan Frank, our 777 pilot, who I think is back from, he was in London, in fact. I think he's back in Houston. Visualization is being emphasized in training and line operations at United. Yeah, I mean, I visualize before we go live and thinking about what the hell we're going to do here with this Crutonic Simple Sailing live feed. But let's go to John Emmett as we're talking about let's get back to this race. The Brits leading 5-4 with 2 minutes and about 35 seconds to go, John, to the start.
It's funny, I'm looking at the moment, I can't even see any boats on screen. I see Alistair in the comment. He obviously wants to give me more grey hair, but he wants Italy to win for more drama. No, I am joking. I would like to have lots of drama, but a good result in the end. We've got the entry now for GBR, and I think they're fine. I think, if anyone has a early entry or boundary penalty, it will be very, very disappointing.
John, do you think the Sea State's even more confused now? That's what Bobby Steele is saying.
Yeah, I think the second race, it's often that way, but I don't think it's so much of a speed problem as a manoeuvres problem for Ineos. We're just seeing the Italians cross behind, and I imagine we're going to see a jibe and follow. And I think for me now, it's all about time on distance with GBR heading up and tacking round. I think, and it is hard to tell from this angle, but a good start leading to the port boundary is probably the way to go. So you're lined up for that long port tack.
Wouldn't it be nice if they put a wind on a little graphic, and wouldn't it be nice to have a PIP, a picture-in-picture of an aerial shot all the time, John?
I'll give him a phone call straight after, Tom.
Would you please?
So we've got a little bit of a chase going on here, and we've got this situation where obviously Italy will have actually jibed a long way before it looks like they jibed. Ineos is now trying to really close it down, and that's close. That's really close. So the key thing here is that time on distance. And at the moment, it looks like GBR can sail over the top. So it's a bit of cat and mouse.
You mean
and I would say GBR here is in a controlling position. We need to see the time on distance for the start.
Well, Sean
So
Hogan
GBR has won the pin end.
Sean Hogan is saying never rule out Spithill, the comeback kid. Some would argue the same about Ben Ainsley.
The key thing is going to be the bear away. So I do prefer where Ineos is. Ineos is in the controlling position. You want to be over speed before the start, over speed, so that when you come up, you take some of that with you. And assuming GBR on time, I think that was a really good start, and they will be coming into boundary protection. And nobody's ruling out anybody, but I would say it's a lot more than one person driving these boats. I mean, nobody talks about the trimmers, for example, but I felt that was a really good start by GBR. Cannot see Italy being able to live there.
I was just going to ask you that. Do you think they can live there? And here they go to the boundary.
I mean, Italy really ought to minimise the damage because we've seen as soon as it gets to about 100 metres, it's quite hard to claw back. GBR's got plenty of time to bear away, get up to speed, then put the tack in, because the faster you're going, the easier it is to put that tack in. But I have been very impressed with the Italians' manoeuvres, but we're already up to circa 50 metres. And it just means at the moment that start, again, GBR winning the port and absolutely key. And this second tack will be a very important one. If Italy go all the way to the boundary and get bounced back, that will be very costly. But will they want to throw in a few more manoeuvres? I mean, at the moment, Italy's definitely closing that gap.
Mark Michelson is asking, which team does better in a declining breeze but remaining slop? John?
I mean, for me, I think it's all about the sail plan, and they look a lot more similar to today. Problem is when you've got two teams which have got a different package, they don't necessarily both perform the same with their J2 jib. So here the Brits have no choice but to slam it right on them. And you'll see the Italians will have no choice but to jibe away. Sorry, tack away. There you go. Joys of doing a live broadcast. But you can almost see those playing. It's like a set of dominoes, play by play, because they will know that if the other team does this, we do this. If they don't, we do this. And lead is just extending. So the Brits are going to want to try and bounce Italy as many times as possible, and then ideally do one less tack to get through the top. But I think so far so good. I'm not seeing anything difference in the upwind performance between Italy this time and last time. But when they're on different tacks, that's when you have the leverage. And I think GBR will be in a position to go on them again. And it's a good learning experience for when the winner goes off to face the Kiwis.
Has anybody seen a wind velocity indication here?
Tanya had great pressure on that left-hand side. Good shift. Massive gain.
That is a huge gain early on. They'll be hoping to keep in that left shift.
A left shift. You hear Ben, the commentators, I think it was Glenn Ashby, saying there was a left shift on this easterly breeze.
Yeah, I mean, if the Brits are on lay, which is always really hard to see when we get a lovely close-up, that's a pretty good indication. So it's about being phase upwind and downwind. So let's take a quick look at this delta because it's very close.
3 seconds.
3 seconds. So still nothing in it. And we see the bearways, they're going well above 50 knots, so that they're pushing it. But I do suspect that Ineos has very slight legs downwind, and it's deceptive just to look at the pure boat speed. It's about the VMG. And what Ineos need to do is try and line up Italy for difficult leeward mark rounding.
Is there more pressure on the right side? And by the way, everybody, Mark Holland now is saying that it's 16.5 knots. He's looking at one of the data screens. Ooh, that's not such a good jibe. They touched down there for a sec. Same size jibs, we think, right?
Yeah, I just think when we look at the positioning on the track, GBR will extend slightly because it's not just pressure, it's shift as well. I think all Italy can do is try and keep themselves in the game and hope for split up win, but I just hope it's not decided by error. It's coming back closer here. So with the overhead shot, this may be another opportunity for GBR to jibe on them. Remember, every time they go through that dirty air, it's a little bit of loss to the second boat, and it makes it very hard to do the overtake. And when you get into that situation where the second boat is jibing, and then the leader is just going on a few boat lengths and then jibing, they're gradually able to eke out a little bit of a lead and stay in control of the race. Remember,
John, excuse me, I just want everybody to see the faces on our Zoomers. They're all leaning into their screens, very serious looks on their screen. John's grinning from ear to ear because his team is leading. Graham's happy because his team is leading. What do you think, Captain Jack? Is this race over?
I think it is. I think Great Britain's showing that with their smaller foils and the right sail package, that currently they're faster.
Ed Worley?
No, I think anything can happen. I think GBR is stretching out, but if somebody breaks something, it's going to change really quick.
Graham,
it's good. It's a good race.
Graham, where's your pillow?
Here you go, Tom. I think the fat lady's just gargling the Listerine right now. I don't think she's quite there yet.
Yeah, Mike Mahoney's just checking in here. He's a colleague in St. Francis Yacht Club. He says it's a race. Now, if the boats don't break, fall off the foils, or start drawing fouls, I don't think we're going to see fouls. But, John, talk us through this bottom gate.
Okay, I'm actually watching on YouTube at the moment, but I felt that was an average rounding by Ineos, and I think it's just about keeping it absolutely consistent. And I have to say, in terms of breakage, if anyone has a breakage, that's a loss. And I would actually say the Italians are possibly not looking as good as they were earlier. I've been really impressed with how many manoeuvres in the medium to upper wind range they've been able to do with one foil. But all the time you get this big split. There's that leverage, there's that gauge for when they come back together, and there's that potential for change. But we have seen right-hand side on average, looking upwind, there's been that little bit more pressure. So 100 meters, I'll say it again, it's not squeaky bum time, just so people can have a Irish coffee or whatever they're drinking at this time. Just because it's in a coffee cup doesn't mean it's not alcoholic.
But it is closing up. The delta was 11 seconds at the gate at the end of leg 2, and it's closed up here to 100 meters.
Yeah, I mean, I think with 100 meters, anything can still happen. And I think GBR probably slightly extending now as Italy gets into a lighter patch. And what will be really good is if they can bounce them back into that lighter patch, if they can do one right on top of their face and just protect that right-hand side. I know all the match racing purists will absolutely love that. There you go. So that's it. Italy have to go back to the left.
So the right
of the race.
John, the right side should be favored. It's an easterly, and normally the breeze goes southeast. Having lived there for 10 years and sailed in Barcelona and done the Olympics and also Valencia, same wind regime more or less. So I think the right, I don't know if there's more pressure right, but it didn't look like there was on the downwind leg, but it does probably, the right-hand side for shifts may be favored.
Yeah, I mean, it did look to me like there was more pressure there. We used to go to Barcelona a lot, but then Prince of Sofia Regatta in Palma became more and more popular, and then eventually we sort of stopped going. We used to stop off at Barcelona, do a regatta, and then get on the ferry. Whereas now it feels like the whole world goes to Palma. It's probably one of the best Olympic classes regattas we have. But let's get back to race because it's hovering around this 100 meters, which is one error, and the Italians are in pretty good pressure. It's interesting that you've got that line in the middle without much breeze, and I think the Brits here are just trying to keep their number of tacks down. I think they're safe, but you're definitely not completely safe. So I say it one more time, squeaky bum. But what they need is just one really good downwind, because the difference between this and your 12 meters is the advantage is still with the leader when you're going downwind. Now, at the moment, it seems more like a loose cover for the Brits, and it means when the Italians tap, they're going to go through that wing wash. And I suspect it's because the Brits are already thinking that they want to go around that left-hand mark going upwind, because that's where we saw a bit more pressure on the upwind. So this is how it works. It's three maneuvers ahead, and it's creeping up to that sort of 150 meters line. And I'm hoping this is attack for the lay for Ineos. And if it is, that could be a really good chance to extend. But we will see another split at the top.
It's interesting. The upwind left may have been favored again. Fritz Mueller saying left paid off last beat when the Brits got a little bit of a lefty, maybe more pressure up there in the latter stages of that first beat. And maybe the Italians this time have closed in a bit on the left, but nonetheless, the Brits are leading downhill now on leg 4.
12 seconds.
12 seconds.
Still nothing in this race, really. Just one little wobble, one little skid by the British team, and Luna Rossa will be
more pressure, I don't know, right, I guess.
Well, I think the Brits have just, and obviously you never know how good these models are, because obviously the boats are doing almost twice the wind speed, I guess. But the Brits are now sailing back into the pressure, whereas the Italians appeared to be sailing slightly away. I'm sure there's some folks who are incredibly happy that they're going to be on camera, or maybe not him. They're going to do kiss cam next. I don't know. But it does feel like the Brits can extend here, and they've got that long port tack. We've talked a lot about these machines. I do think they're absolutely amazing. They are absolutely amazing flying machines. But yeah, if you look at the angles now, I think Brits looking pretty comfortable, and I think the way they close the race down is just sort a really good rounding at that bottom gate, and try and make it very hard for the Italians.
Course change to 098. Mark Holland is telling us. Captain Jack, please mute yourself when you're not talking, because I've got you all on speaker view so that when there's noise coming from one of you, any sound coming from one of you, it will switch automatically. Automatisch to you. Go ahead, John, please.
Yeah, I mean, the lead now, that 300 meters, I think becomes a little bit safer. You need to remember that actually the pressure is possibly staying where it was in the race course, but the whole race course has been rotated. So you're still sort of trying to target that same lineup. But these maneuvers, I mean, look, it's really difficult. You've got both foils down to try and avoid that hobby horse, because basically stable is fast. That's something that happens in almost anything. Every time they do that bit of hobby horse, you get that speed washed off. But I think that was probably the last jibe for Ineos. I think they're online for the bottom gate. Whereas I guess the Italians are going to be splitting. So 200 meters isn't enough for the Brits to end up being exactly upwind of them. So they're going to put a jibe in to either force the Italians to follow them round the gate, or to make the Italians do one more jibe. So this is a crucial head up. Both foils down. We've gone down to about 27 knots. So we're going to see the race close up now a little bit, but in a way, it's a much more controlling position for the Brits. I'm struggling to read the red. I think
it was 10
seconds?
seconds. And the question now, the course go back to 098. Boy, they're being very precise. Rick Hayes is asking, what was the course axis before they changed it to 098? Mark Holland, do you know what the previous course axis was?
8.7.
Yeah, 10 seconds delta. The deltas so far have been, what, 3, 11, 12, and 10. So it's been about the same. And there's more pressure on the upwind left, John?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the Brits are going to consider losing a few more meters here just to close that gap, and they are better lined up for the pressure. But it's really close now. As soon as we get to less than 50 meters, you're gonna worry a little bit. The Italians now going higher and faster, and this is really turning into a bit of a boat race.
I wonder why they tacked there. I wonder why they didn't beat cheeks for the boundary. I guess they want to force the Brits to tack, eh?
Well, I think if you're behind, the only way that you're going to get past is by throwing in a lot of maneuvers. And it's now, if for anyone who's drinking, it's now probably squeaky bum time because we're under that 50 meters. And it might be a case of who can tack best.
But by tacking twice, you've just gone through the wash, the dirty air of the Brits twice, right?
Yeah, and the Brits are basically going to want in this position the race to finish as soon as possible. The longer the Italians can make the race, the more passing opportunity they have. We now have a bit of a split, which is always dangerous for the Brits, especially if there's that bit more pressure on that left-hand side. And it's difficult to know whether the wind is trending to the right or it was just the right shift, or if it's oscillating, in which case you'd expect it to go back. But crikey, that there must be some real key decision-making here. I think now that Ineos is up to 80 meters, they can again go on Italy, or they can choose to keep on going if they feel that actually that left-hand side was better. I mean, Italy's sailing, I think obviously had a quick word with Alistair Murray. They're sailing to keep this absolutely open. And a bit of excitement here, bit of drama. I think that's why it's easier to commentate when you're on the radio than being watched. But yeah, with 80 meters, there's anything in it. And for sure, the Italians will try and do a split at the top. I think the Brits probably back up to about 100 meters now, and that's getting towards that safe zone. The only problem for me is it does seem to reward sailing your own race now. In other words, it becomes a bit of a time trial. There's Giles Scott. How's he looking? If you want to look at somebody's face, it'd be much more telling than the Fosie. The Brits, I guess, are just going to the boundary here, and then we'll see what happens with the meterage. As long as they can cross, I think it's sort of okay, but I guess it's much tighter than they would really want.
Yeah, it's an interesting day.
I love these long shots, but they don't give you the information about how close they are. This is a photographer's dream, a videographer's nightmare. Because for all I know, the Brits could be on the ley line. If the Brits are on the ley line, then the Italians will be doing one more manoeuvre or following, neither of which is very good. And I think the Brits played that well. For the Italians, it'll be really hard to do the tack and bear away. And I think let's have a look at this delta. If it's over 10 seconds.
8
seconds. So the question that everyone's going to be asking in the debrief, was it worth throwing those meters away to gain control of the race? So I'd expect to see the Italians jibe first, lead into a jibe, and the Brits going shortly after. And every time they do that, they're throwing the wing wash back at their rivals. So there's an opportunity here for the lead boat for Ineos to extend. The Italians looking a lot more happy now. It's funny, isn't it? Because traditional match racing, the attacker is always the boat behind. Whereas here, it's almost the opposite.
Yes.
So they're getting into a lot of pressure here. But again, they will sail through it first. I do think that the package on Ineos is a little bit better for the downwind, and I expect the meters to start creeping up now that they're into the same wind. And it's about having the tools in the toolbox so you can go high and fast or low and fast to really keep your positioning relative to to your opponent. So I think I've said it a few times, but these leeward gates are very, they're very important. Up over 200 meters now. So no longer squeaky bum time. Am I going to get a finger wag?
Well, you might. I see Julia's on here, so you may get one on Friday, just after the fact.
I mean, Tom, it's definitely after the midday here in UK, and definitely Barcelona. And I think on Friday we're going to have racing. I hope just one race, but we'll leave that. So it's quite hard from this angle to see exactly what's going on. But I think the Brits are just sailing a conservative race. And with one more lap to go, there is always that element of luck that when they get to the bottom, they end up in phase. And the Italians will have no choice but to try and do something different, because we are in the final stages of the race and we're getting to the pointy end of the regatta. I mean, it's first to 7 points and the Brits will be, as you say, on match point after this. I do think that the Brits are lined up better for this downwind gate. And I think they've given themselves plenty of room. So the tighter they are to the mark, the harder it is to do a good rounding. Here we might be able to do a 1 foil rounding, which is obviously a lot better than 2 foils, less drag. No, still a bit of sideways slip there. We'll see what the delta is when the Italians get there. Actually, the Italians look like they were having to sail quite a hot angle to get in there, but we have this split.
13. Let's ask Graham Sweeney, is this race over, Graham? How's your bum? Are you squeaky bum there in Scotland?
I don't think we'll talk about my bum. Let's talk about John's bum.
Captain,
I think it's not over yet.
It's not over yet. Okay.
No, but it's nearly done and dusted. But I won't celebrate until we're across that bloody line.
But you're happy, Captain Jack. Are you happy?
I'm happy to see somewhat of a race, but I think the fat lady's vocal cords are ready to scream.
Okay.
I mean, if you're okay for me to jump in, I'd say it's been one hell of a race. I mean, my resting heart rate's about 50 beats a minute, and I'm quite... that's good TV for you. I'm about 80 now, and I'm not doing anything other than sat down.
Ed Worley, how are you feeling in SoCal?
Oh, good tack.
I think Ineos has got it. They just got to be conservative and keep covering, just like they just did right now. They just got to do the basics and play the script out.
A match race at 40 knots. That's what some of the Fozy in the chat are saying. John?
I think if Ineos stack soon, they're going to be really nicely lined up for that left-hand pressure. And in terms of squeaky bum, I wouldn't want to give the rivals too much separation because it's close. I mean, if you look at that sea state, these are amazing. I look tired or feel tired just looking at that, because I know how incredibly hard work that will be to get your Ilka to go upwind in that. So we've got, I imagine, both teams almost doing a simultaneous tack now. So we're probably second half of the final upwind. So these meters are now becoming crucial. But I do think Ineos is more in phase. And I think they're just now sailing their own race. And I said, start absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. And I think it's much more of a race than people realize, because one bad tack, that distance goes. One bad tack. But I think that the Brits have got this, and they go to the port hand boundary, but they are obviously playing it safe. I don't know if it's the design package, but they do more 2 foils than the Italians.
Say that again. They do more 2 foil maneuvers. What do you mean by that?
Yes, anytime they turn the boat, I think they spend very slightly more time with 2 foils in than the Italians. And I also hope the Kiwis are feeling suitably nervous, because that's the real thing. Brits here going to be coming up for probably the last tack of the race. I'm not sure whether Prada's also on the lay line.
Yeah, I think they both are.
So we're the fat lady's gargling, was it whatever it was, Listerine. But I mean, the Italians, I've got to take my hats up. They've sailed an absolutely amazing race from where they are. I mean, it's always easy to sit here as an armchair warrior. I don't think they could have done anything different. In fact, it always amazed me the number of people who sit online and happily type away how they could have done better. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal sailing. I guess it's 10 seconds, 9 seconds.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're in the realms, but we're in the final, crikey, we must be in the last 10% of the race now in terms of the time. So I think the Brits need to just really focus on their own stuff. They're going to be doing more or less boundary to boundary. It's going to be pretty close at the end. I think it's just a case of keeping it simple with the boat handlings. I do love all the crowd shots they do just at the point the boats are jibing, which I would quite like to see. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a really close cross here. And I said, I don't think the Italians could have done anything better. I think when we look across the entire series, choice of sails is going to be absolutely key. And, you know, we always talk about whatever Ben and Jimmy, but there's a whole host of people who make these boats race around the course, and the shore team and the meteorologists are possibly some of the most important people in the team. And you might not necessarily know their names. So we have a cross here. Oh, it's really hard from this shot, but it looks like GBR is carrying on and going to that boundary.
As you would.
Yeah. I mean, I think the racing's been fantastic. I think there's been much more of a match racing element than people would expect. And I think we see it in any really, really high-level racing.
Captain Jack
is absolutely key.
Absolutely key. Captain Jack?
Yeah, Tom, one of the things I want to keep in mind here is when they show the data from the last race, Italy was faster by a few knots, but they sailed a longer distance. So let's keep that in mind in this one as well.
Okay. John, we got a few meters left here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason for that, and the Italians are down to about 100 meters difference, but as a chasing boat, you're really trying to look to gain gauge, and that's why having a high mode really helps. But the Brits are on lay for the finish line. I guess it's going to be about a 10-second delta, 150, 200 meters. And I just can't believe I booked a flight for 1 p.m. on Friday. What was I thinking? Literally 1 o'clock.
Match point for the Brits. They've won 2. Very impressive day. Alistair Murray, Bravo Zulu to the Brits. He's up late in Sydney where it's 15 minutes before midnight. And Fog Machine saying, that's Lance Burke here in the Bay Area, as close match racing as you can get in these boats. Totally agree, Rick. Lots of comments. We've had over a couple hundred comments. The duel, Graham Sweeney is saying, the duel of the squeaky bums. Graham? Bravo Zulu.
Well, I did say that those nails were going to go in that coffin.
You did. You predicted it.
Yep.
And you must be feeling pretty good. Maybe it's that Harley Davidson plaid shirt you've been wearing. You look more like our vice presidential candidate from Minnesota who was on the debate here last night, Tim Walz.
I think it's my lucky T-shirt from now on.
You better not change anything.
No.
Well, Ed Worley, are you surprised?
Pleasantly surprised, yes. I would, like I said, I really want to see Great Britain in the America's Cup final. I really want to see that again. It's been a long time.
8-second delta at the finish. Thierry de Jong is really happy. Great race. Patrice Rockland, woohoo! GBR, congrats. Mark Holland, when cycler Neil Hunter is on port aft, they do less well. Who do you mean by, is that the Brits? Superb race by both. Theo Smith is saying, nice job, guys. Royal Island Rover, thank you. Jonathan Frank, so the key is the following boat to minimize the exposure to dirty air and the leading boat to throw as much dirty air as possible, which is why we don't see passing. Well, we did in that first race, a couple passes. We don't see passing, and the boat that wins the start wins the race. So unfortunately, it becomes rather predictable. Baton Rouge, we haven't seen a comment from Baton Kennan. The Brits get a break, sit on match point. Yeah, it's really like in tennis. They've got a break. They're up a break here. John Bosley, great sailing. Captain Jack, John Schaefer in the Zoom.
Yeah, the Brits have 3 races to win 1, so I think it's all in their favor.
Certainly is. Larry Kennedy says that WD-40, after our big discussion yesterday, it's their stock is up. Bruce Nelson is saying lesson is don't start tight right. Tough spot for LR right off the starting. It certainly was in this race. I agree with John that the Brits won the race at the start by being at the pin end, as we would say. They're both pins technically. Thanks, John, for the excellent commentary. Thierry de Jong is saying. Jamie Hutchison, yet again, great commentary. And Ralphie Steitz, nice work, GBR. There's a lot of folks on here commenting. Final thoughts. Let's go around the horn here, and then we'll get off the air and see when the next race. Let's hear what Ben's got to say. Excuse me.
Was required. How good?
It's great. Good effort from the team. It's bloody hard to sail these boats and these waves. It's just hard to explain to people just how tough it is. Team did a great job. So obviously great get the 2 wins, and still a long way to go. Still need to get to 7.
Ben, when you crossed the line, you said there was nothing lucky in that victory. How much did you feel you earned every meter of it?
Oh, God, Shirley. Give me a break. As Coleus used to say, gag me with a spoon. Wow, wow. Hi, all. Book hotels on the Isle of Wight. Well, let's don't get ahead of ourselves, Marcos. Okay, around the horn. Ed Worley, you first. Your analysis and who's going to win the next race.
I think GBR did a great job, and I think Luna Rossa is going to come back with a vengeance now and really try to win the start. But these boats are so close in performance that one mistake makes a huge difference. It's actually sort of nice to watch.
It is indeed. Boat speed differential edge to Ineos. Captain Jack, do you agree?
Absolutely. I think Ineos does have the edge. And, Tom, I did learn one thing today, that earlier when you saw Spithill grab a water bottle and clean his visor before the race, I think it means that there's a cup holder inside the Italian boat. And so I think it's going to be the 3 races to win 1. And I think well-favored and well-raced, and probably the better team right now with Parkinson, don't forget, as the wing trimmer. One of the best in the world is there at Ineos.
Indeed. Sean Hogan, hope you're on the road to a speedy recovery and mending from your stint in the hospital. Thanks, everyone. The best way to watch the racing. Great fun. John Emmett, final thoughts?
Do you have time for one very quick anecdote?
You bet. We got all morning. It's only 6:45 here in San Francisco, and I'm not going back to bed.
So back in the day, and this is literally 24 years ago, when Shirley got her first gold medal, I was her training partner in the Europe dinghy. Paul Goodison was working as the training partner for Ben Ainsley, again for his first gold medal. And so I know Shirley's voice very well. And I also know her ex-husband, Jamie, and she's got twins. And she was actually breastfeeding in between training sessions during her keelboat campaign. But her son is quite into sailing. In fact, I recently signed a copy of my book to him, and he was watching some of the commentary with his dad, Jamie, and he said, "Can I have the remote?" And he put Shirley on mute and told Jamie, "I always wanted to do that."
Well,
but
I didn't know where you were going with that, if we were going to get a finger wag from Julia. But John, talk us through this pre-start, the replay.
Yeah, I mean, I said let's just agree to differ, but I think Ineos won both starts by winning the pin end. That was pretty clear in my mind. I think Ineos may have a slight advantage come Friday in a lesser sea state. And the reason I state that is simply it felt like Ineos had more control problems with the really bumpy sea state than the Italians. But I do think they have the legs. They're showing the stats now, and I think Ineos is in very good shape. But it's all about the start. Both teams will go back and they will analyse that. And when you're on a roll, the worst thing you want is a rest day. There was that very famous situation, crikey, I'm going to get it wrong now, whether it was Venus Williams or Serena Williams, where she very nearly won a competition at 14 years old and they deliberately forced a break to stop her losing her flow. All the teams will be developing all the time. But you've got 3 chances to take home now. And I think the Brits, they need to think about their starting, and a good start, I think they can do it for sure.
Well, they're happy they're at the Brit camp, and I thought you were going to talk about 2013 when the Kiwis were up and they took a break, a rest day. In those days, you could call a rest day. You had one chance. And they, of course, called the rest day, and as we know, the rest is history, and the Americans came back with...
I was watching that in China, so I feel your pain, because that was 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was at the World Championships, ILCA World Championships in China.
Yep.
So I must say, Tom, I'm very grateful that you're getting up at 4 a.m. every day. I don't know how you do it.
Well, that's with all of you and the Zoomers and the Chatterers, Tom Mitchell down in San Diego, or maybe in Mexico, I'm not sure where. John Schaefer saying we can't write off Jimmy, never piss off a ginger. Okay, Graham Sweeney, take us home.
Well, thank you, Tom. What a great day. I mean, I got all I dreamed for, and we now need to get that one in the bag and bring it home. I mean, if you're for Team New Zealand, you'll be watching us now, wouldn't you? You'll be thinking, "Whoa, this is what we're going to be up against. We could really be losing it." So, come on, Team New Zealand, let's have you.
And Ryman's giving me shtick. He's saying, "Come on, Tom. Do you still think Ben should be on the boat?" Okay, let's not. I promise not to revisit that, and I sure as hell am not going to revisit that now. Jim Sears is saying, "Go Prada." Will there be racing tomorrow? Good morning, Susan Kenny. Will there be racing tomorrow? Have we heard? Do we know? Any of the Zoomers? Tomorrow is a scheduled reserve day. And Ian Murray has the regatta director has the option to go ahead and race them tomorrow, and I guess this will depend on TV. Next race day is Friday, Andy Cox is saying in the chat, and I think he's right. I think tomorrow is a reserve day. Chris Bogomil, there's a new name, Chris. Welcome. What is the tally? Did Ineos take both today? Yes, they did. Ineos is on match point. They are up 6-4. 6-4 in the first to win 7. And Bobby Steele saying, once again, slight downwind speed from Ineos from race stats. Slight downwind speed edge, I think he means, for Ineos. From the race stats, they're now interviewing, who are they interviewing now, John Emmett? Do you know these guys?
Yeah, we talked a little bit before about blended. I hope we're looking at the same. Oh, no. Sorry, you're looking, blended. So he came through 29ers. And he's a good Welsh lad. Believe it or not, he was actually providing the powers for some of the previous cups. But these guys have sailed with Ben for just ever, and I think their role is just. They always talk about Jimmy, or they always talk about Ben, but there's a lot of people make that ship go fast, and that's the difference.
Did you say ship? To make that ship go fast?
Yep.
Okay, that was going to get a finger whack from Julie if you said the Shiza word. Thanks, everybody. I think we'll wrap it up from here. Thanks especially to John for the commentary, and thanks also to all of the Zoomers and the chatters. I really enjoy, and I try to squeeze the chatters in because we're getting such great comments on here. And we do appreciate it very much. That gets us to the finish line for today's watch party. I think they will be off the air in another 6 minutes. I think at the top of the hour, so we won't follow through. They got a TV package on. Cindy Alton Delato, thank you for your kind comment. And thanks again to everybody for joining us. We are at the finish line. And as Julia would say, please like, follow, and share. And that'll also, if you do the notification bell on YouTube, you'll get a reminder when we go live. Sean Hogan, good night to you down under in Melbourne. And good morning to the rest of you. Good afternoon to those of you in Europe. Comments are welcome, even in replay. We leave that open, and we so dearly appreciate those of you who are helping us, keeping us in our studio on the air here via Patreon. Become a patron via patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. Our upcoming schedule, we think, keep an eye on my Facebook page and the Sailing Illustrated Facebook page. We do not think there'll be a watch party tomorrow. We think it is a day off. We think it's a scheduled reserve day. We've not heard that Ian Murray will schedule racing, so we're assuming tomorrow is a day off. Friday, however, will be another watch party, we believe, at 0500, the usual time. And then probably not do a regular show. I'm not so sure now. I'll consult with Julia. Our regular show normally at 1300 Pacific Daylight Time for our regular Tuesday and Friday show. Hopefully we can do a show. It just depends on my time and whether I have the time Thursday to prepare the show, on the assumption we're going to do a watch party Friday morning. No change posted on the notice board. Mark Holland is just saying, thank you, Mark, for that. I agree with Andy Cox. What a great bunch of people on here. Maybe aside from the Chief Crouton here sitting in Studio B. But it's like sitting in, this is a nice sentiment, like sitting in the bar at your favorite yacht club. Well, I hope this is your favorite yacht club during these watch parties. Paul Callahan, the superb New York Yacht Club, and also down in Miami, superb sailor and longtime friend. It does look like we will be doing a watch party Friday morning, and we'll decide then whether to do a regular show Friday afternoon. Good night to you, Mr. President, down in Melbourne, and we shall see you for sure Friday morning, it looks like. And Bravo Zulu to the Brits who are on match point. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day, or have a good sleep if you're down under, and sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao for now. There's everybody on the Zoom. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.